Live everywhere.
Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman, Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, May 29th, 2018, the day after Memorial Day. We were here yesterday. We were. I guess we didn't publicize it enough, but who knew? We were winging it to begin with. Plus, of course, that was really Greg's job. It was the Greg in the Morning Show yesterday, and he should have publicized it. But I think Monday, Memorial Day, well, you know, things are slow to start over at Daily Kos. I think that maybe our morning post for yesterday didn't run on the front page because we were on our holiday schedule, just as there was no midday open thread where we often advertise the show. And then what happened this morning? I queued another post for the morning, and Bill noticed all the way in Portland, Maine, because the internet goes everywhere, even Maine, and I mean everywhere. Right? I'm not saying anything about Maine. I'm saying it goes everywhere. And he noticed, hey, it's yesterday's post. Nice job, boys. You're running yesterday's tape. Well, anyway, yeah, so I guess that one ran yesterday, and they, in running the vast machine that is Daily Kos, didn't notice the slightest, and it is usually only the very slightest difference between one day's post and the next. So I think we got that fixed bright and early thanks to his intervention. My excuse was that I was still drunk from Memorial Day, but I don't know if that helps with the bosses. But anyway, we'll come up with something for you today, or just continue drinking one way or another. Actually, I don't think I drank a thing yesterday. I hydrated, but lots of inappropriate celebration for Memorial Day yesterday, and of course, celebration probably all by itself inappropriate, but lots of people enjoy having the day off and do celebrate it. And I don't know, I wasn't as terribly offended, I guess, as I could have been, or maybe should have been, at the morning tweet from Donald Trump about it, in which, of course, he made it all about himself. And I don't think it's because I'm becoming used to him doing it, though that is true. I think my outrage meter is damaged as a result. But I don't know. I thought among all the various things he was doing, even that very day, it wasn't nearly as bad as any. But plenty of people were there to take offense on my behalf. There was plenty left over in case you were not outraged. But we are live once again. We did a show yesterday for you because what else were we going to do? We had the day off, and we thought it would be an excellent opportunity to update you on what had happened over the weekend. Not much has changed since the weekend. Donald Trump on a tear this morning, screaming about something or other, and I guess he's got a new catchphrase, 13 angry Democrats, that he thinks is like really hilarious. I just saw Paul Waldman, I think, tweeting, wondering aloud whether there's somebody on the staff there who stands around and tells him, you know, you really zinged him with that one, sir. Russia, witch hunt, har har, you're really killing him. I got no idea. So, who knows? Not sure whether there is such a person or not, but he's convinced that this idea of bashing 13 angry Democrats is totally resonating. And maybe with his base it is, but as we're constantly reminded, there really aren't that many of them. But what does he know? He's in the White House. We keep insisting he's the president. He thinks he won, and therefore won overwhelmingly. And I guess it's not really likely to change anytime soon. Interesting observation also, as we notice now, the fact is, I guess, I mean, I don't know, maybe not. I'm taking a lot of people's words for it. Melania Trump, as Greg mentioned yesterday, has not been seen in public for some time. And we're not Russia, I think, and certainly not the old Soviet Union. And people don't very often, I don't know, there shouldn't be this kind of Kremlinology about anybody. But certainly not the spouse of a public official. I don't think that's ordinarily what we spend our time on, but, well, these are not normal times, as you know, and a good observation, maybe not relevant to what's going on here at all, but a good observation nonetheless. Sarah Kendzior, who says, trying to imagine, the usual scenario, trying to imagine if some other president did this, trying to imagine the reaction if a previous president had a record of beating and raping his first wife, which he does, emotionally abusing his second wife, which he does, sexually assaulting multiple women, which he does, and then his third wife is abruptly hospitalized and has not been seen for 17 days and counting. That is something. And we're supposed to take from it, of course, that he put her in the hospital in some way. I have no evidence for this. Sarah has no evidence for this. It's just the sort of thing that ordinarily you might want to check up on, which you don't when the president is involved, but usually that's because the president is a relatively honorable person who lives by, the dictates of law and common decency. But you know how we're doing on that score. So it's a question. It would be irresponsible not to speculate, as we constantly remind ourselves. And after all, he's breaking so many other laws along the way. Why not imagine he could also be breaking this one? Which is still essentially my mindset on the unaccounted for, let's say, migrant children. Do I think he's personally taking a cut from selling them into child sex slavery? No. I think maybe he is not. Or he's certainly, if it's going on, he's not in on it and he's not getting his cut. But when he finds out, he would take his cut. I suppose there's always that. But, I guess really more to the point on that front is, once again, they're just really not 100% sure what they're doing in this program, and they never bothered to develop a protocol. And as a result, there are a lot of people becoming vulnerable. And he also has a pretty well-established record of not caring very much about when children become vulnerable, except to the extent that he gets to exploit them once they become vulnerable. Is he involved in exploiting these? I don't know. And it's a horrible thing that really the best thing you can say about the best thing you can say by way of exculpating the sitting president of the United States from a speculative from speculation about his involvement in a child trafficking ring is, well, the kids involved probably aren't to his taste. That's not really how you want to extract the sitting president of the United States from a wild, speculative rumor like that. You want to be able to say, well, of course not. He's the president of the United States. That's lunacy to suggest. Oh, yes, I think I would prefer to have gone with that excuse had that been available to me. But it wasn't. Okay, so moving on. Here's something totally different, and it's next because it's sitting in my hashtag KITM column on TweetDeck, which, by the way, I remind all of you, an excellent way and probably the most efficient way, but not a perfectly efficient way, by no means perfectly efficient, to catch my attention and redirect the show at this point or some future point by sending your notes, observations, questions, comments, criticisms. What else can we throw in there? Knock-knock jokes. I don't know. Whatever you're reading on the Dixie Cup or on your popsicle stick, if you're old enough to remember when those were entertainment media. Then do it on the KITM hashtag on Twitter. Also, just as it's not perfectly efficient, we have not perfected ownership of the KITM hashtag. There are at least one or two other groups that occasionally use it, either intentionally or by accident. I think there is a radio show or podcast out there that maybe on a weekly basis that calls itself Kitchen in the Market or Marketplace. And I should just listen to them just because we're brothers in KITM-ness. But there's a couple other mistaken ones in there too. But mostly it's us, so don't feel bad about using it. So here's what arrives via the KITM hashtag news from Brian Monroe. You know Brian Monroe. Brian Monroe is now. Are we saying this is no, normally, and in normal times, and again, these are not normal times, but maybe this has to do with what's happening here. But our Brian Monroe, Canuck pundit, we know him that way, and I notice now that I get in my hashtag, and it's got to be him because who else would use that ridiculous hashtag, right? But Canuck pundit, the Twitter personality, is our friend Brian Monroe, and I have this news, and maybe he's just got two Twitter accounts going, because I guess if you were doing what he's doing, you would say, well, I might want something other than Canuck pundit to do this under. Brian Monroe, now under the handle of Brian J. Monroe, Munroe, sends me this one just in case you wanted to share. And now I really do want to share. And it is word from HamiltonNews.com. And this is not news about the musical Hamilton, but rather from Hamilton in Canada. Now, you and I in America know that as Hamilton, Canada, just the way most people around the world know places like New York, America, or Chicago, America, you know, from the end of Fiddler on the Roof. Normally, like normal people who know what they're talking about in Canada, or when they're speaking of Canada, would say, well, it's Hamilton, that would be the province, and then Canada. And I don't know. And everybody does. Like, what state is Los Angeles in? California. What province is Hamilton in? Canadians know. And that's the important point, really. But what's important for those of us here in the United States and around the world, is it illegal in Canada for Russia to intervene in your elections? I think so. Probably, right? So don't intervene in his election, but just say, good for you, Brian Monroe, because Brian Monroe felt it was time to take action. So that's the good news. This is it. Hamilton East Stony Creek Green Party candidate Brian Monroe, terrified, don't feel too bad, but I mean, I'm with you there, of a Ford-led government. And that sounds pretty reasonable. And remember, this is Canada, so running as a Green Party candidate is a different story. We were all for the most part, all committed American Democrats here, and we say, Green Party. This is Canada. It's different. I don't know whether people also say Green Party, in Canada, but it is different. Frustrated with the provincial Liberals, and come on, aren't we all? And unhappy with what the progressive Conservatives, it's Canada, what the progressive Conservatives and New Democrats were offering in this election, the businessman decided to join the Green Party and run in Hamilton East Stony Creek, where a candidate had yet to be selected. I got sick and tired of the status quo, said Monroe recently, and how could you not? I got tired of people going to the ballot box, holding their nose, and vote for somebody they didn't really want. I want someone to vote for me because they believe in what my beliefs are. It shouldn't be me, because that would be illegal. Monroe has let it be known during recent debates that he is terrified of Doug Ford, leader of the Progressive Conservatives, of winning the provincial election. He recently took the PC, get it, candidate for Hamilton East Stony Creek, Akash Gruel, to task for skipping out on a recent Cable 14 televised debate. That does sound enticing, but maybe he had something else to do. But hey, if he does, then he shouldn't be a candidate, so go Brian. It's embarrassing the PC party didn't feel it necessary to be here and be accountable to their lack of a party platform. He said, Ford is untested and boorish. He's out of his depth. So how do you like that? What could be better than stepping up and running for office when you see a serious deficiency? How do you like that? I do like that. Monroe, who is from North York, it says, but relocated to Stony Creek about 13 years ago, So he's a newcomer, eh? Said it's time the Green Party is recognized as a viable party in Ontario. There we are, finally. I guess, really, basically, you're more or less safe guessing Ontario as the province almost always. Look at this. Here's some other fun eastern Canadian provinces with which I'm familiar. In New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, hooray, and we have listeners in Prince Edward Island. Well, okay, maybe one, but, I've been on vacation here, so it's very important to me. And British Columbia, other side, people are electing Green politicians, but in Ontario, the television stations have shut out Green leader Mike Schreiner. Is that right? Do I have it right? From participating in the debates. It's a decision that rankles Monroe. Well, I'm sorry he's rankled. So go, Brian. Get on TV. We need like some sort of thing you can shout out, like Baba Booey for signaling all of Canada that you're a listener to Kagro in the morning, and that will generate like millions of votes for you, I'm sure. And well, keep us up to date on that news. That's really pretty fascinating. You can't ask for more than stepping up at that level. Do you have a serious, is there a chance you might have to, serve in office? I really, well, do we have to change the time of the show? Let us know what we can do to support you, and whether or not we can meddle in the election. I'm guessing no, but appreciate having the news, and of course I wanted to share. So everybody, follow along. That should be pretty damn exciting. I say something outrageous. I say, why not? Okay, let's see. Where are we in all of this? Let's head over to Pocket and see, hey, what was it that I thought was super important like a few minutes to one full day ago and meant to discuss with you, because I can't remember from minute to minute. The top item of the day, and really I guess it was yesterday, carrying over into today, is there is a number of stories out there that I think were or have been obvious to you and I for quite some time that the newspapers are just catching up to, and this is where we often remind you that listening to Kagro in the morning or reading Daily Kos is often like getting the newspaper early. We've been through the dynamics on that before. We're not sure why that is the case, but it is. So let's dive into the New York Times headline: Ivanka Trump wins China trademarks, then her father vows to save ZTE. Another small piece in the puzzle. We have known for a long time about the trademark game in China and Ivanka Trump seeking those trademarks for her clothing line, etc., shoe lines, which is an amazing thing because she copied most of that line from someone else, although she is out Chinesing the Chinese on this, and I guess I kind of enjoy that aspect of it. Weird photo of her walking away from Marine One, the presidential helicopter, assuming that the president was or had been immediately on board, in a trench coat, which I thought were banned. So she's on her way to commit a mass murder somewhere, and Secret Service does not seem perturbed about this in the least, but there she goes, trench coat, sunglasses, classic mass murderer outfit, but worn classically, I must say. I really appreciate the way the fabric falls across the concealed AR-15. Anyway, here's the story by Sui Li Wei. Now, again, the story concerns our relationship with China. And there's some Chinese lettering as there frequently is in the New York Times when there is something covering this, and it's Dateline to Beijing. But that's the Sui Li Wei, and I'm sure I've mangled that, but I'm certain it rhymes somewhere along the line. China this month awarded Ivanka Trump 7 new trademarks across a broad collection of businesses, including books, housewares, and cushions. Good. I'm so glad that she finally got the trademark on those effing cushions. It's been bothering me for a long time. I don't sit right. Literally, I can't sit right on this cushion unless I know that it's protected from copyright infringement in China. I mean, this has probably been bothering you too. But I guess I was going to say, that the trademark issue for Ivanka has been one that's been on our radar for a long time, and it only makes sense that it would end up being added as a piece of the puzzle to the ZTE thing. We have not really probably gotten to the last bit of that one. We haven't heard all there is to hear about what Donald Trump may have received in trade for this otherwise nonsensical effort to boost the business fortunes of Chinese spy / cell phone maker outfit ZTE. It doesn't make any sense. Congress allegedly scrambling to try and block the implementation of this thing. It will make for an interesting contest as between a complicit Congress's sort of, kind of, almost backhanded effort at doing something versus Donald Trump's why don't you justism of, hey, let's just change the way things are with ZTE because I say so. And I guess it's a question of which one of them will forget to finish their work first. But, okay, so Ivanka Trump's trademarks now, another conflict of interest / straight up international foreign bribe / emolument / question mark, looks like the appearance of impropriety. No one knows how to treat it, allegedly, in the press. So we're going to go through another round of that, too. China this month awarded Ivanka Trump 7 new trademarks across this broad collection of dumb stuff that she sells. At around the same time, President Trump, you're never going to believe it, vowed to find a way to prevent a major Chinese telecommunications company from going bust, even though the company has a history of violating American limits on doing business with countries like Iran and North Korea, and is Chinese. So what the F are you even spending a moment's thought on it? A Chinese firm is going bust? Terrific. Who cares? That's just literally not your concern. But all right, he's made it his concern. Coincidence? Well, probably. Really? Do you think so? Still, I don't think so. Still, the remarkable timing is raising familiar questions about the Trump family's business and its patriarch's status as commander-in-chief. Even as Mr. Trump contends with Beijing on issues like security and trade, his family and the company that bears his name are trying to make money off their brand in China's flush and potentially promising market. I really don't know how you even dismiss this as probably coincidence. I mean, it is the case that Ivanka Trump's company would likely be pursuing trademarks in China anyway, were he not president. But that's the reason why everyone should be divesting from these things, especially if she's a White House senior advisor or whatever the hell it is that they call it. It has security clearance, fake security clearance, or personally granted by the president, and everything. All of this stuff. I mean, ordinarily, you just divest from that stuff. Why? To, quote, the old line, avoid even the appearance of impropriety, as opposed to the impropriety itself, which is what we're actually having now. We're just manifesting the impropriety that everyone thinks is there. And why you would think it's coincidence, I have no idea. It's not. It can't be, really, by definition. I know what you're thinking, or I think I know what the author is thinking, that if she were a private citizen, which she was probably when she applied for the trademarks, she's probably thinking, well, this is about the amount of time that it takes for such a request to go through the system and be granted. It's not that her father became president and she became a senior White House advisor in the interim. And even had that not happened, this is about how long it would have taken to get those approvals. Maybe that's true. Maybe the Chinese really thought it through and handled it strategically. But it's not coincidence because she is both a senior White House advisor and daughter of the president and is seeking these trademarks in China. And that should not be happening, but it was a conscious decision to go ahead and do it anyway. Therefore, it cannot be coincidence. Now, it may be that his decision to do something inexplicable to the benefit of a giant Chinese telecommunications corporation that employs, I don't think, any Americans and is constantly violating American trade limits on trade with Iran and North Korea, and also is suspected of manufacturing surveillance and spy equipment and trying their damnedest to plant it on Americans who they can use as viral vectors for espionage. But, you know, hey, we do such things. And I was going to do that anyway. Even if I wasn't president, I would have been in front of the American people, regardless, cheerleading for ZTE. Because reasons. It's not coincidence. Okay, fine. On with the article. Still, the remarkable timing is raising the familiar questions about the Trump family's businesses, its patriarch status as commander-in-chief, etc., just as we suspected. The most recent slew of trademarks appear to have been granted along the same timeline as Ms. Trump's previous requests, experts said, but more broadly, they said Ms. Trump's growing portfolio of trademarks in China and the family's business interests there raises a question about whether Chinese officials are giving the Trump family extra consideration that they otherwise might not get. There is also that question, but we have our own questions here in the United States of America, like why are you pursuing it at all when your main focus should be advising the White House or serving as President of the United States? And it isn't, and that's troubling. So the critics say that foreign governments that do business with Ms. Trump know they are dealing with the president's daughter. Of course they do. A person who also works in the White House. And of course they know that as well. Some countries will no doubt see this as a way to curry favor with President Trump, wrote Fred Wertheimer, president of Democracy 21, and Norman Eisen, chairman of the Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, two nonprofit watchdogs. Mr. Eisen's group reported on the trademarks on Saturday, and that's how we know about them now. We will follow up with this and much more after our first break. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, interrupting this little break to say thanks so much to all of you who are contributing supporters of Kagro in the Morning. Thousands of you are downloading the show each day, but fewer than 1 in 25 regular listeners are donating to help keep us on the air. For the money you'd spend on a single 3-minute iTunes song, we bring you 2 hours of great news and entertainment every day, 5 days a week. Patreon.com, Patreon.com makes it easy. You can find us there by searching KagroX or David Waldman or Kagro in the Morning or even Daily Coast Radio in their search box, and you'll be right where you need to be to make easy, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Once again, thanks so much for your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We continue with the fascinating, and it is, in a way, fascinating story of Ivanka Trump suddenly, and for no particular reason, I guess, winning trademarks in China all along about the time that her dad, the President of the United States, allegedly, decided he was going all in on saving Chinese jobs at gigantic government-owned telecom firm. I mean, everything's government-owned, I guess. ZTE. So, lots of questions arise. But, hey, you know, because it took about the same amount of time to get the trademarks last time, pending his, election to the presidency, whatever, this time, no problem here. Other countries, we are told, may see the business requests made by his daughter's company as requests they cannot refuse. Almost certainly the case, especially as she is a White House advisor herself, and Donald Trump notoriously greedy and corrupt. So, yeah, of course, it's a request they cannot refuse. Ms. Trump's representatives have said there's nothing improper about Ms. Trump's trademarks, and that they prevent individuals from profiting off her name, except, of course, her and her dad, her husband, I guess her kids as well. And, I know what trademarks do. That doesn't tell me, that there's nothing improper. There's nothing improper about them because they are trademarks. Yes, thank you for that fabulous insight. Abigail Clem, who is apparently the president of the Ivanka Trump brand, said in a statement on Monday that the brand's protection of trademarks was, quote, in the normal course of business. Of course it is. That means nothing. Especially in countries where trademark infringement was rampant. Yes. Also, by the way, yesterday I did see some people sort of trying to argue that, hey, that's what trademarks do. I don't really understand that as an argument. This trademark grant is okay because trademarks help people protect their brands. I know that. That is just, is that just misdirection, or are you really that confused when I assume it's a little bit of both when you answer like that. But I also saw some people saying, hey, you don't really win trademarks. If you are doing business under this mark, it's in everybody's interest. Even the communist Chinese government, occasionally, it will be in their interest to make sure that, your products are yours and they live up to the quality that you promise, although I don't really know that that's worth doing for Trump products necessarily. But, all the roles that trademark fulfills here and in other regular capitalist type economies, and to the extent that they practice certain amounts of limited capitalism in China, there too. But the idea is, what I saw sort of proposed as a semi-defense of this is it isn't about trademarks being awarded to her or her winning trademarks. You're entitled to claim trademark if you're doing business under a mark and selling products, and you're always legally entitled to sue infringers on your mark. And that, that's true, I guess. Certainly in the United States, you've stated, American trademark law pretty accurately. And it's probably the case even in Chinese trademark law that you're entitled to file suit if you think someone's infringing on your mark. But I don't know that trademarks are actually awarded the same way here as they are there. And by awarded, I mean in the United States, if you can show that you're doing business under this mark and either no one else is, or that someone else who is doing it is, has run some risk of confusing the consuming public as between your goods and theirs, or, even if you're the only one doing that business and you make your application, it's a matter of right that you can trademark what how you're doing business and under what branding you're doing business, subject to certain limited restrictions. There are certain things you can't trademark. Among them would be someone else's already existing trademark, or, things that are merely descriptive of, what your product is, or, you couldn't, ordinarily you can't trademark, for instance, White House official brand President Donald Trump gumball machines, whatever it might be. Now you can't mark it like that, but that's not what she's doing. Like I said, under the normal course of American trademark law and most Western trademark law, that's true. It's not a matter of winning it. It's just simply a matter of showing that you do business this way and that this is your mark and this is your brand. I am not at all certain that it is the same in China, where, you're talking about a centrally planned command economy still basically at its heart, and a Chinese Communist Party that is firmly in control of everything that gets done by the Chinese government at every level. I'm sure there's slack given here and there just to keep the gears turning. But if the Chinese government didn't want marks issued, they wouldn't be issued. I don't know that they really regard trademark as a matter of right there, or that they will enforce it the way we would expect them to enforce it here in the United States. But for the president's daughter and for a White House advisor, they very well may afford those privileges in China that we're used to here in the United States. So let's continue back again with the article. So the president of the Ivanka Trump brand, who is not Ivanka Trump, is Abigail Clem, says, don't worry about it. This is all normal. People get trademarks. We have recently seen a surge in trademark filings by unrelated third parties trying to capitalize on the name. Either Trump, I guess, or Ivanka Trump, or some other version of it. That's what Ms. Clem says, and it is our responsibility to diligently protect our trademark. That is also true. It just isn't responsive to the question of whether or not you are getting special favors from the Chinese government in this situation. Chinese trademark officials didn't respond to a request for comment on Monday. It was a holiday. They were closed. I don't know if it's not a holiday there in China, but still, they also don't have to respond at all if they don't want to. They're from China. Not that, I'm just saying, they don't know. What do the Chinese government officials care if they're asked by American newspapers about something? Who cares? By the same token, who cares if people are losing their jobs at a Chinese telecom company? No, not us, Chinese people. It's your job to worry about that. And not even all Chinese people, just the ones working at ZTE or whose relatives do. And those who are socially conscious, I guess. Mr. Trump said in a surprise announcement on May 13th, surprise, he's working with China's President Xi Jinping to save jobs at the Chinese telecommunications company ZTE. That is a surprise because they're Chinese, not American. The company was left paralyzed after American officials forbade companies in the United States from selling their chips, software, or other goods to ZTE for violating trade controls. You know this story. Mr. Trump's announcement was widely seen as a potential peace offering to Beijing as the United States and China threatened each other with tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of trade. And by the way, guess what? Now that they've got the trademarks, Trump is back at the job of threatening increasing tariffs on trade with China. I just saw that go by somewhere, and maybe I'll grab a tweet or two to prove it. Well, let's see. So can I do this quickly? I mean, I think I saw Darth actually tweeting about it and making the comment, geez, I hope Ivanka's trademarks are okay. And I'm sure they will be. But let's go take a look, because it'll probably link to, yes, there we are. And there's his tweet. I hope Ivanka's line is okay. The White House has just announced 25% tariffs on $50 billion worth of Chinese goods. Well, that's the news. CNN Money is tweeting it. And there's an article to accompany it and everything. And I mean, what else can I tell you? He said, that's it. The White House has announced 25% tariffs on $50 billion worth of Chinese goods Tuesday. That's today. The final list of Chinese products will be announced on June 15th, and the tariffs will go into effect shortly after. So like everything else, soon, about 2 weeks, I'll tell you what's going to be. What are you increasing tariffs on? I don't know. It could be, we'll see what happens. It could be fortune cookies. It could be those fancy fans that the ladies have. It could be chopsticks. I don't know for sure. We'll have to figure this out. We'll see what happens. He probably has no idea. And he probably has no intention necessarily of imposing those tariffs. He's just going to hope that that the Chinese offer some sort of bribe to him, or if he's lucky, some sort of concession that he can point to and say, I don't manufacture these things. Somebody else does. It's somebody else in my family or somebody else I know very well from Mar-a-Lago Club, which, by the way, is the most fabulous social club in Florida. Exclusive. You can't join it unless you have $200,000. In which case, give that money to me, and then you, too, can have your products rescued from Chinese tariffs. We'll see. We'll see what happens. That's the way it is with everything for him. Okay. Is there more in the New York Times coverage? There was, of course, we were just speaking about the May 13th surprise announcement that I'm going to help ZTE, and that it was widely seen as a peace offering to China in this escalating threat of trade wars. Just before and after that announcement, Ms. Trump won some long-sought trademarks covering her name in China. Ta-da! 6 days before the ZTE announcement, China said it approved 5 of Ms. Trump's trademarks, according to data from China's trademark office. Then on May 21st, China awarded Ms. Trump 2 more trademarks in snacks, because everybody knows about the Ivanka Trump snack line, right? Spices. We all know about the Ivanka Trump coriander blends. What? Spices? She's so spicy. She's going to put spice in your mayonnaise, ladies and gentlemen. And bleaching preparations. Why? I don't even know what any of these things are. But clearly, they're so well known in China that a trademark is in order. In total, Ms. Trump now has 34 trademarks in China that would allow her to capitalize on her brand in the world's second largest economy, which, all by itself, is a violation of all kinds of conflicts of interest laws and ethics in government laws. And I presume, I guess the emoluments clauses in the Constitution are really, I haven't studied them that closely. We've been speaking of them in terms of how they are meant to limit the ability of the President of the United States to divide his loyalties. But I don't know whether they apply to other officials in the federal government, but surely certain other ethics laws in standard statute would have something to say about White House advisors owning trademarks in China and seeking additional trademarks while in office. And that's not even to mention, how greedy are you that, what snacks, spices, and bleaching preparations is Ivanka Trump marketing that need trademarks in China? I have no idea, but I don't keep up on these things. Experts said the timing, you don't need to be an expert. Normal people with eyeballs said the timing appeared to be a coincidence, given how quickly Ms. Trump won her previous trademark requests from the Chinese authorities, though they differed on whether she appeared to receive special treatment. She shouldn't be receiving any treatment at all, but we're debating whether it's special or not. The base problem is that there's treatment happening. You don't do business in China while you are advising the White House, period. Ms. Trump applied for 6 of the trademarks in March of 2017, when, of course, she was the president's daughter. She applied for the 7th even earlier, in May of 2016, when she was the nominee's daughter. China's trademark office usually takes up to 18 months to approve trademarks, said Charles Feng, head of the intellectual property division at the law firm East and Concord Partners, about which I know nothing. Maybe they're a Trump family business. I've got no idea. From application to registration, this is very fast, he said. Laura Young, the trademark lawyer at Wang and Wang, and I'm not kidding. That's very puerile of me. Okay, she said she did not see anything unusual about the timing. But again, she works at Wang and Wang. I didn't see anything unusual. Aren't you the lawyer from Wang and Wang? Yes. Well, tell Mr. Wang that I'm surprised to hear that. There's no Mr. Wang at this firm. Oh, I'm sorry. Have I been sexist? Is it Ms. Wang? No. There's nobody named Wang at all there. No, it's just we love calling our law firm Wang and Wang. Well, that's unusual. I don't see anything unusual about that. Well, okay, granted, you don't see anything unusual about anything, Laura. She pointed out that under Chinese law, the trademark office should complete its examination of a filing within 9 months, and that some of her clients get decisions within a year. Again, this is all true, but how many of your clients get decisions while they are the daughters of the President of the United States? How many of your clients get decisions while they are senior White House advisors to their own fathers? It's a huge chunk of this is just being ignored for, I presume, the strategic reason of covering up the corruption of it and trying to pretend that everybody does things this way. Nobody does things this way. This is the first. Still, Ms. Trump's fame, I need that as a little sound clip so I can just stop singing forever, is likely to have helped her with the trademark approval process in China. No. Yeah. Oh, yes.
No!
Yeah.
No!
Yeah. See? It's a big, raging debate about whether or not her fame has helped her with the trademark approval process in China. Well, even Ms. Young is willing to concede that. The president's daughter has a large following in China. What? Where she is lauded by many for her appearance and wealth. Oh. Well, hey. To be honest, she's lauded by many for her appearance and wealth here in the United States. And I was going to say, oh, I'm disappointed. Like, in what? Oh, you're letting me down, world communist movement. No, you're not. I had no expectations for you at all. Besides which, who cares? But that does seem sad in a way. But okay, videos of Ms. Trump's daughter, Arabella, singing Chinese songs have gone viral. Well, all right. When a person is famous and the examiners say, oh, I've heard of this person, it can be decided more quickly than if the examiner is not sure and has to consult others or go to a committee, Ms. Young said. And that is likely true. And as a fairly serious point, it's not meant to say, oh, I've heard of this person, therefore they're famous, therefore I'll give them their mark because they're famous. Well, it kind of is, actually, isn't it? But what they mean is, oh, I've heard of this person, and so therefore other Chinese consumers, in fact, most Chinese consumers probably have as well, and it is therefore a mark that makes sense to protect, as opposed to, the David Waldman line of snacks, spices, and bleaching agents, about which most Chinese consumers have heard very little. Still, what that works out to is an interesting way of covering for the fact that they are granting these things to the daughter of the arbitrary, greedy, and extraordinarily vain president of the United States. Mr. Trump himself has more than 100 trademarks in China. Several United States senators have criticized these trademarks, warning it could be a breach of the United States Constitution, and that foreign governments could use Mr. Trump's trademarks to influence foreign policy decisions. Yes, a problem anticipated by the founders. But who cares? Those guys are idiots. Mr. Trump said he has handed over control of his business to his 2 adult sons, but he hasn't. The Trump Organization has said it has been actively enforcing its intellectual property rights in China for more than a decade to protect its brands from infringers. And I don't know, but it doesn't matter. They're not supposed to be doing it now. China's infamous trademark squatters, people who register the names of famous brands and people and squat on them in the hopes that they can cash in on it, have flocked to the Trump brand. And who can blame them? I have wanted to squat over a Trump for a long time, but I'm holding out for the end of their presidency. According to Mr. Feng, there are more than 10 Ivanka trademarks registered by parties not related to Ms. Trump, and God forbid any of them make any money, of course. Some of these include a company in the southern city of Foshan, which has registered has registered Ivanka, which is spelled here Yiwanka. Now, if you tell me that was registered through Wang and Wang, I am just about gonna crap a brick. Ivanka. It sounds like Ivanka, I guess, is the idea. That's the Chinese translation of Ivanka. Oh my goodness. And it's for sanitary pads and tampons, which really, honestly, to which I have no objection whatsoever. The Nanjing Good Daughter Wine Company, the title of my next novel. The Nanjing Good Daughter Wine Company, an alcohol maker, has registered Ivanka Trump in English and Chinese. To what end? I don't know. Ivanka Trump wine, I guess. The trademarks are not the only Trump-related deal that took place around the time of Mr. Trump's pledge to save ZTE. On May 15th, an Indonesian company called MNC Group, which is partnering with the Trump Organization to build a 6-star hotel, not a 5-star hotel, you schlub, a 6-star hotel and golf course in Indonesia. Said it had struck a deal with an arm of the Metallurgical Corporation of China, a state-owned construction company, to build a theme park next door to the planned Trump properties. MNC has said that the hotel and the theme park are separate projects within the same development. And I don't know how that's supposed to help, but it is, well, that's what they claim. Anyway, so good for you. Indonesian company MNC Group building a 6-star hotel and golf course and amusement park, theme park in Indonesia. And I don't know what that's supposed to do with anything, I guess. But I guess, oh, right. They forgot to tell us that there is a Chinese investment, or I guess that's it. This is left unstated, which we know on background, that the Metallurgical Corporation of China is building the theme park, and it's state-owned. And so the value, presumably, of the Trump Organization's interest in this 8-star, 50,000-star hotel, Diamond Star Award winner. This hotel people are going to want to stay in this hotel, not only for the fabulous golf, but also for the beautiful metallurgical construction of the theme park next door. Everyone's going to want to go to Disney World. It's not at all a trademark issue. We're very sensitive to our trademarks in China because of the fabulous people who are doing such a great job administering trademarks in China. Disney World it's a business theme park. It has nothing to do with Walt Disney or whatever that guy's name is. Whoever even heard of him, really, honestly. He's nobody. He's a total loser, and he's dead, and he's frozen at that, by the way. I didn't want to bring that up. But many people are talking about this. And it has nothing to do with this guy because we're the ones that invented the mouse thing. And quite honestly, everybody knows it. I don't think it could be any clearer. So, okay, more emoluments. YOLO, LOL, nothing matters. And the idea that you could get trademark experts in there, first of all, they could pull their attention away from Wang and Wang for long enough to tell us, oh, it's perfectly normal. Really? Why is it perfectly normal to grant trademarks to the daughter of a sitting president who is herself a senior White House official? Well, it's normal because businesses do this all the time. What? Are you kidding? That's really it. Okay. Well, the comments are in. Wang Dang Doodle and Sons. Thank you, Mighty OCD, for adding that one. And what's his name? The Ted Nugent guy is super happy about your mention of that. The Warlock says it's encouraging that Trump brand is being helped by foreign governments. Sure, absolutely. And it's nice. It's international cooperation. It's chocolate cake. It's a beautiful thing. There's plenty more going on, but that's top of the news. I can't really understand how that continues to happen, but it's just plain, YOLO. What are we going to focus on? It doesn't make any goddamn sense, but that's what's happening. Before our second break, and I guess our attempt to try and round up a larger number of stories in our second hour, rather than just complaining about the one for an hour long. I'm not promising anything, but it could happen. We want to take note of the fact that Ellicott City, Maryland has disappeared again for, I think, the second time in like 2 years. They've had these enormous, there's been enormous rainfall in the area for a long time. They are, I guess, pretty clearly right up against a river there. Ellicott City, I think, sort of a suburb of Baltimore, and has a historic downtown district, and as many historic downtown districts along rivers do, they occasionally have floods. The problem with what's happening in Ellicott City is, I think it was about 2 years ago, if I saw that correctly, as it mentions before, they also had these enormous floods, and I mean like raging 6-foot-high river pouring down the middle of the town's downtown streets, washing cars away. And that was at that point referred to as a flood that was the result of a 1,000-year storm or a 1,000-year flood. You know how they refer to these things. It was only going to happen once in 1,000 years that this river is likely to get that high. Rivers flood all the time, but at this level, once in 1,000 years. Well, what they meant by 1,000 was 2, because they just had the same problem again. And I have seen lots of people commenting, they say that this ridiculous storm and this damage that's been done so frequently now is not due to any sort of overdevelopment of the area and I guess problematic encroachment on the natural drainage along the river or the addition of too much runoff at some point in the river. I don't know. But, you got to have questions in your mind when you have 2,000-year floods within 2 years. And, I mean, the damage is incredible. You've almost certainly seen the photos or videos of, literally, I'm looking at one right here that Think Progress tweeted around the other day. There's a pile of cars in somebody's backyard, like in the fenced-in backyard of a very small little row house along one of the downtown streets. It's crazy. And by the way, if you saw the video, you likely saw the video of some dude whose name escapes me. I don't actually know, but I did happen to see yesterday, and I'll dig it up, I think, during the break, that he captured the video himself and circulated it on Twitter, and in the due course of things was naturally asked by television stations around the country whether or not they could use his footage. And you know how we are with copyright and trademark here in the United States of America. That's the intellectual property of the person who actually produced the footage. They asked him for permission to use it on a local Fox News affiliate, to which he said, no, F you, you can't use it, you're Fox News. Everyone had a good laugh, and then Fox went ahead and used it anyway. La-di-da, LOL, YOLO, nothing matters. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We could use a longer break to do all our searching around for all the damn things that we need for to catch up on what's happening out there. Yes. I'm sorry. In my passing reference to the mighty OCD's mention of Wang Dang Doodle and Sons, misplaced my references, and I was thinking of a number of things, and only one of which was Ted Nugent, and I don't know, his ugly face kind of came to mind. But I recall that that's actually been recorded by others, including those who I guess originated it, and those are the folks to whom he's bringing to my attention now, saying Wang Dang Doodle is a Willie Dixon song, best performed by Howlin' Wolf. Whatever that Ted Nugent crap, we have to say, is, it ain't Wang Dang Doodle. It isn't. In fact, it is something much worse and probably something we shouldn't even read on the air. Those of you who actually were or might even still be Ted Nugent fans somehow know very well what we're talking about. But you can take a look and look it up, and I don't know what you can say on the radio anymore given that the president talks about grabbing people by the pussy. But in deference to olden times, making America great again and all that, we won't read necessarily the full title of Ted Nugent's Wang Dang Sweet Other Thing, I guess you could say. I don't know, why he thought that was clever, but, he's kind of a doofus. So that, I think, from the old Cat Scratch Fever album, released in 1977, classic rock from Ted Nugent, and that's coming up next. That's my radio rock and roll DJ voice for you. I should just can we do a morning show, but playing music, introducing popular music titles in the Donald Trump voice? All right, so I found the originator of the video footage so widely used by Fox News and others, Max Robinson, who tweets under the handle of Die Robinson Die. Yes, just how you would imagine it would be spelled. Max Robinson probably gained a lot of followers with this one, sent out this video, and then Fox News picked it up and used it, despite the fact that they were quite clearly denied permission to do so. But he picked it up anyway, and then Max followed up with the question of, so, you guys going to pay me for the video I told you couldn't use, or did Bill O'Reilly's wandering Wang tap you out? Good question. Really not. It's really kind of rude, but hey, I appreciate it in context. Okay, so that was pretty wild, and really no explanation for that. That's just straight up, they're like, well, we'll use it, and most people don't have the money to sue us, so what the F? LOL YOLO. No thing matters. Okay, let's see. By the way, short explanation of what the Warlock meant by it being encouraging that the Trump brand is being helped by foreign governments. I don't know whether this is meant to be serious or not, quite honestly, but he's saying, oh, well, foreign governments are less likely to take action against the U.S. So this is now a national security issue. We can secure America's, well, are we going to have to say secure America's national security? I guess so. That was probably a poorly constructed sentence. But we can ensure the American national security by reversing everything in the Constitution and allowing the president to take bribes from foreign governments, because foreign governments won't, launch military strikes against the regimes the American regimes with which they feel confident in their dealings because they have paid bribes to the person in charge instead. Well, that's an alternative theory. It's just not the one we are supposed to be operating under, and we're supposed to instead ensure American security more sustainably. We're not very good at it, but we're supposed to be securing our relationship with other foreign entities on the basis of fair and open trade and exchange of ideas and respect for human rights, etc., and mutual respect of sovereignty. That's not working out all that well, but that's the basis on which we're supposed to be dealing with foreign governments, as opposed to there's cash being exchanged as between the nominal leaders of the two countries to no benefit of the people of those two countries. But, it worked pretty well for a couple hundred years, maybe 1,000 or so, in the days of feudalism. So we can't really argue. Historically speaking, it's been a pretty strong model. It just hasn't been very helpful lately. I guess that's one way of looking at it. All right. Let's see. Other things we wanted to touch on besides the massive floods and the intellectual property theft by Fox News. Let's see. One Daniel Dale tweet storm from yesterday, the one we actually didn't share, one of three that were share-worthy yesterday, but I think got left out of the mix when we were talking to Greg. I thought a very interesting one, just a close study of Trump lies. Daniel Dale tweeting yesterday, here is a rare case in which you can see Trump formulating a lie in real time. And he was questioned about this, Daniel was. Rare case, what are you talking about? And he clarified, it's a rare case that you can see the formulation of the lie early and watch its progress, throughout the lifespan of the lie. You can see its genesis. Very often, you can't tell exactly where the lie comes from and whether he's passing it on because he's read it somewhere or seen it on television. Very often you can see it, but it's rare that you get a insight into his own generation of a lie. And here it is. His prepared speech for his MS-13 event last week. I didn't realize it was an MS-13 event, but accurately said that MS-13 had reportedly called for the killing of a cop in the Long Island area. Again, his prepared speech said that MS-13 had reportedly called for the killing of a cop in the Long Island area. He started saying that, according to his prepared text. He began to recite the prepared text, but he stopped mid-sentence, Daniel says. And Trump said instead, last month, MS-13 reportedly called for its members here on Long Island, where I essentially grew up, but he didn't finish that sentence. That's all he said at that point. Last month, MS-13 reportedly called for its members here on Long Island, where I essentially grew up. He pauses. Instead, Daniel says, he talked a bit about growing up nearby. You know Jamaica, right? Not the country, but Jamaica, Long Island. And many of you would not be familiar with it, that town, unless you were from the area nearby. But you know Jamaica, right? I've always said Long Island. It's very close. To call and to see what happened is just incredible. What is this garbled sentence? He's trying to harken back to call for the killing of a cop, but he doesn't even get it. To call and to see what happened is just incredible. And nothing happened, of course. There was a call for something, and nothing happened subsequent to that call. But that's it. Now, he then returns to the sentence about MS-13 and the cop, except this time, instead of saying, as his text did, and as reality would dictate, that MS-13 reportedly called for a cop killing, he said MS-13 actually killed a cop, which did not happen. And I guess this is the statement. He says, but they killed a cop for the sake of making a statement. They wanted to make a statement, so they killed a cop, a policeman. Now here's the full excerpt with a fixed typo, Daniel says. The president inventing a cop killing, got no coverage outside of Twitter, as far as I can tell from the internet. And the internet can tell you everything. MS-13 lives by the motto, kill, rape, and control. That's actually their motto. Kill, rape, and control. I don't know whether it is or it isn't. It's not a good motto, even for a gang, honestly. It needs a little more flair to it. Something I wouldn't trademark it in China or otherwise, is what I'm saying. It's too descriptive. You get the idea. So, MS-13, he says, lives by this motto. It says, and he swears that that's their motto. Last month, MS-13 reportedly called for its members here on Long Island, where I essentially grew up. Not where he grew up. You know Jamaica, right? I've always said Long Island. It's very close. To call and to see what happened is just incredible. But they killed a cop for the sake of making a statement. They wanted to make a statement, so they killed a cop, a policeman. Yep, Trump has made this claim or similar at least a couple of times. It's on the long list of things he says that seem very obviously made up, but we can't call false, because he's so meticulous about these things, because there's no proof. And he includes here the tweet of Daniel Rubin, senior legal editor at Reuters. And he says, Daniel does, this is minor yet also telling. Right? Jamaica, mentioned. I grew up here. I grew up on Long Island. Jamaica, right? It's close. Jamaica is in Queens. Literally, no one thinks of it as a Long Island neighborhood. So he went to a lie to butter up the Long Island audience, to buy time to make up a worse lie. He's reading, in other words, the text, and it says that MS-13 called for the killing of a cop. Well, that's not dramatic enough. We should say that they killed the cop. They killed the cop with an egg beater. Something horrible. They ripped his face open with a claw hammer. I don't know. It's got to be horrible. But I need a second to make up the lie. So what I'll do is I'll stall for time by lying about where I grew up. Where am I? Long Island. I grew up around here. I grew up on Long Island. Everybody knows. Well, close. What I mean is Palo Alto. Okay, Jamaica, Queens, it's closer, but he's not from Long Island. It's close, but it's not close, and, people are pretty jealous about their boroughs or whether they live out on Long Island or not, and even in Long Island, are you Suffolk County? Is it Suffolk? Yeah, or Nassau? It's a big deal, but okay, North Shore, South Shore, territorialism reigns like everywhere else, but okay, so I need to lie about where Jamaica is and mislead people who know very well that Jamaica is not on Long Island, but is in Queens, but I just need a second in order to kick this into gear. They didn't call for a cop murder. They did it, and it was horrible, and they barbecued him. So, this was, I thought, a very interesting illustration for this. And again, like I said, there was some pushback. Somebody said, rare case, and he's just clarifying, rare case of being able to see him assemble the lie in front of us step by step. And I think that's very true and very much worth sharing, even if it's not particularly insightful into exactly how he's destroying the United States of America. Just one quick example of us being able to watch him do it in real time. All right, let's see. Paul Waldman, no relation to me, of which I'm aware, but hey, who knows, has been on fire lately, and someone should put him out. It's really a disgrace. But that's socialism, I read on Twitter the other day, or maybe not, depending on which side you're on. Anyway, Trump's craziest claim about Russia. I thought, what a headline. Let's go and take a look about what does Paul Waldman think is the craziest claim. Well, he says for a man with a lot of serious issues he needs to address every day. Oh, I see. I was just going to leave it at that. For a man with a lot of serious issues, President Trump, okay, there's some intervening words there. President Trump plainly spends a lot of time thinking about Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 election. More superfluous verbiage. If you're one of his supporters, it can be a challenge just to keep up with the shifting defenses he offers for things he and people working for him did during the campaign. So today, that would be yesterday, I think. That's when I found it. Yeah. We are going to focus on this rather extraordinary outburst from yesterday afternoon. That'd be Sunday. Remember this outburst? Harkening back to Sunday. Who's going to give back the young and beautiful lives and others, in parentheses, which means nothing, that have been devastated and destroyed by the phony Russia collusion witch hunt? They journeyed down to Washington, D.C. with stars in their eyes and wanting to help our nation. They went back home in tatters. And lots of good speculation here. I think it's right on the mark. That's about Hope Hicks. But the perv is back. The young and beautiful lives and others, by which I mean boobs, have been devastated and destroyed. And not so much the boobs there. But anyway, stars in their eyes. And you know what else I like is photographs with stars like over the strategic parts of the boobs. My favorite kind of photography. Real artistry, I say. And I don't know. So he's sad about Hope Hicks, I guess, getting kicked out of Washington, D.C. And then more ranting. Why didn't the 13 angry Democrats investigate the campaign of crooked Hillary Clinton? Many crimes, much collusion. That sounds like Dogecoin there. Anyway, and by the way, did we ever decide what that is? Is that supposed to be, like, is that D-O-G-E? Clearly, you'd want to pronounce that Doge, but is that a play on doggy? Like, is that how a dog would spell doggy? Is that the idea? Anyway, such crimes, many collusion. Why didn't the FBI take the server from the DNC? Rigged investigation. Why didn't President Obama do something about the so-called Russian meddling? This one was the most, like, I thought, babyish of the bunch. You probably saw this one. Why didn't President Obama do something about the so-called Russian meddling when he was told about it by the FBI? And we said he did, right? Because he did. Because he thought crooked Hillary was going to win and he didn't want to upset the apple cart. He was in charge, not me, and did nothing. Wah. This, Paul Waldman comments, is like someone on trial for bank robbery saying that bank wasn't even robbed. Somebody else robbed it. And what you really be asking is why the cops didn't stop the bank from being robbed. I don't even know if it's really like that. But okay, Paul Waldman said it, and it's in the newspaper, so we got to say it. Last week, I wrote a piece arguing that we need to stop chasing Trump down the absurd rabbit holes that he digs for us, where we pretend that some ridiculous lie he tosses out is worthy of serious consideration. So I want to tread carefully here because the question isn't whether Trump's specific allegations have any merit. This is worth discussing, however, because it's part of a broader campaign on the part of the president and his allies, if he ever has a broad idea about anything, and to create a fog around the truth of what happened in 2016. It's plain that he desperately wants us to forget those events, particularly his own actions and those of people around him. We should say there's a case to be made that President Barack Obama did not act aggressively enough to counter Russian meddling in our election. All the reports we have gotten suggest Obama was extremely reluctant to do anything that would suggest he was trying to use the resources of the federal government to help Hillary Clinton. With good reason, right? For instance, at one point, Comey suggests that he could write an op-ed explaining what Russia is doing, but Obama said going public would play right into Russia's hands by sowing doubt about the election's legitimacy. That, according to the New York Times. So, there may have been more aggressive moves Obama could have made, even if any public statements he had offered would have been unlikely to change the outcome of the election. But here's what's important now. Whatever you think about Obama's decision-making, it changes nothing about what Trump and his campaign did. And because this president is trying so hard to obscure the factual and actual, history of 2016, let's review some of the facts about the Trump campaign and Russia that are not in dispute. And it's always good to review facts, and there's a bunch of them, and they're bullet pointed. Trump's former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, is under indictment. We know all about that. His deputy, Rick Gates, pleaded guilty. In June of 2016, Donald Trump Jr. was approached by an acquaintance with the offer of dirt on Hillary Clinton, the infamous Trump Tower meeting. When the story broke about it a year later, Trump himself reportedly dictated a false story to be given to the press. We keep catching him in that. It goes on for some time, but what I guess what we really should be worried about is the conclusion here. Where is the craziest thing that he said about Russia? To repeat, none of the things above are in dispute, and it's only part of the full picture of the Russia investigation, which is expanded to include other potential crimes. We can argue about the significance of any one piece of that puzzle. Some pieces are very significant and others may be trivial. We can also argue about whether Trump is innocent or guilty of particular crimes, such as obstruction of justice. But the connections between the Trump campaign and Russia were so copious that I couldn't even read them here on the air, that it would be positively bizarre for there not to be a serious, thorough investigation, especially considering that we know Russia carried out a comprehensive effort to manipulate our election. Yet that is exactly what Trump is trying to persuade people to believe. Not just that he's innocent, but that he and everyone around him are so obviously innocent that there should never have been an investigation in the first place. Of all his crazy claims about Russia, that may be the craziest. And I assume so. And it jibes pretty well with what we heard yesterday from Maggie Haberman, that he believes that what he says is the truth. And that's extraordinarily dangerous as a personality trait for somebody who's supposed to be, well, leading the American people, leading the free world. Take your pick. We can abandon our role as leader of the free world if you want to, but we're still supposed to be running a real country in the real world, and he can't do it and never could, and we probably need to do something about that. That is troubling, don't you think? All right. I recall yesterday, yes, there we are. I knew that I had this tweet marked in Pocket and that the display was misleading. That told me it was one thing, but I opened it the other day to double check on it, and it was something else, something I wanted to share with you. Remember, about a week ago, I guess, that I shared a tweet from Congressman Don Beyer of Virginia, who was discussing the Jared Kushner security clearance and the process that these things go through, and the reminder that once again we were being misdirected. The misdirection, I guess, was the methodology behind the lie about Jared Kushner's security clearance, just to cover all the bases there. Recall that the White House was insisting that the news that he had been granted his security clearance was evidence that the FBI no longer found anything suspicious or worrying about him. But we were reminded by Don Beyer and others that that's not the way security clearances work, that the FBI is the branch of the government that conducts the background investigation subsequent to requests for security clearances made by client agencies, as they call them. You know, if you're trying to get your security clearance through the Department of State will make the request, hey, FBI, investigate this person's background and tell us what you think about giving them a security clearance. The FBI will issue what is essentially an opinion. In our opinion, this person is a child molester and ought not to get a national security clearance. State Department, now do what you will with that. And the State Department, as the requesting client agency, will respond and make the determination. It is the client agency that makes the determination on whether or not the security clearance will be granted. It would ordinarily, under normal circumstances, be crazy for the State Department to say, you say he's a child molester, eh? Well, we like that in this administration, and so therefore that person will get a security clearance, because ordinarily that would eventually be reported on, and everyone would say, child molesters, we don't want perverts in New York City, and we don't want perverts in our national government. Or maybe we would say, I don't want no perverts in New York City because they're Democrats and I oppose them. Perverts in the American government, if they are either my family or Republicans and they've given me a lot of money, or perhaps are Mar-a-Lago members, I'm pro-pervert on that score. And then we all say, YOLO, nothing matters, and move on to the next thing. But okay, so that's what we learned from Don Beyer last week, that the White House was the agency, in this case, the client agency that asked the FBI, please investigate the background of Jared Kushner and tell us what you think about our intention to issue him a national security clearance, top secret and whatnot. And they said, we find a lot wrong with that. Here are those things. To which the White House said, piddling garbage. We don't care. We're issuing the security clearance anyway. That was always the prerogative of the president and of any of the branches of the executive branch, the sub-branch, the various agencies, bureaus, etc., that he controls as unitary executive. And by the way, did you see that one making a comeback the other day? Rudy Giuliani, I think in one of his weekend television appearances, revived a kind of one particular flavor of the unitary executive theory that was popular briefly under the George W. Bush administration, which kind of goes like this. Well, the president is the commander-in-chief. True. And that means he's in command of everything. What do you mean exactly by that? In other words, they don't bother limiting it to when the use of the term commander-in-chief, not limited in their minds to military operations, but rather that he commands in chief everything that happens in America. And so that, therefore, in this particular argument, the idea that the president shouldn't have access to all of the so-called evidence against him and everybody who worked for him in the Mueller investigation, that information shouldn't, by any rights, be withheld from the President of the United States, even though he's a chief target, perhaps, or even if he isn't, of the investigation. Now, under our normal operating mode, you don't interfere with ongoing law enforcement proceedings. And by the way, if we were to ask the White House any questions about stuff like that and they didn't want to answer them, they would say, we don't comment even, much less meddle in ongoing criminal investigations. But it's his right to do that because, why? Because he's commander-in-chief, says Rudy Giuliani. Commander-in-chief. Everyone says, what's the chief law enforcement officer in the United States? If you thought it was the Attorney General, you're wrong. It's the commander-in-chief of the police or whatever, of anything, the FBI, of all things, really, in fact. Who gets to determine whether or not that handicapped parking hangar that's expired is really still valid? The commander-in-chief, because he commands, and he's the chief commander, and that's the theory. Well, in some places that's valid, and in some places it's not. Rudy Giuliani, of course, wants to apply it across the board, and that's not valid. But in the case of granting security clearances, it really is. Even actually outside the White House. Inside the State Department, though the State Department may be the agency that asks for security clearances for its personnel, the president is the head of the ultimately the head of the State Department and can presumably overrule the Secretary of State on such matters, but not because he's the commander-in-chief, but because he's the chief diplomat. And the State Department is a creation of Congress that's vested in the powers of the chief executive. Well, it should come as a surprise to no one that Ivanka Trump likewise got her security clearance at the same time as Jared Kushner. And yet it was reported last week like, oh, surprise, guess who else got their clearance? I don't know why that was the case. We'll talk more about that in a minute, though. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's continue. When we left off, I was up against my break music and was saying, yeah, I'm not certain why why people expressed any surprise. And it was so weird to me. Maybe I was misreading it and people weren't expressing surprise per se, but they were commenting on the fact that it seemed unusual to them that Ivanka Trump would just happen to have gotten her security clearance at the same time as Jared Kushner. And I don't know. So maybe I misread it because it seems to me like obvious that they were going to come as a pair. They're both White House senior advisors. They both obviously have the same financial troubles in their background as a married couple, despite the fact that it may very well be that they've arranged their affairs such that Ivanka Trump has no interest or control of the Kushner companies. I would not be at all surprised if they separated their interests that way. That would make a lot of sense, even if they weren't, a bunch of spoiled rich bastards. But they work the same job. They're there by virtue of the same nepotism, essentially, and they both started at the same time. So I wouldn't be surprised if they both got them at the same time, even if the real process had been used. But the fact that we know from Don Beyer that the real process wasn't used, or at least not as intended, the FBI went ahead and did their background investigations and concluded whatever they concluded. But it was up to the White House, i.e. the president himself, to ultimately make the decision about whether or not to give them security clearances. And it wasn't like he was going to say, okay, who's this guy? Jared Kushner, never heard. Well, eventually he will say, who's this guy, Jared Kushner? I never heard of him. When Kushner is indicted, he'll say that. But in the meantime, he's not going to be like, I don't know who this guy is, but oh, look, Ivanka Trump, I'm aware of her. And she's got a security clearance question pending out there at the same time as this guy, which is incredible. And in fact, there's just two of them now on my desk. I might as well sign both at the same time. They came as a pair, so obviously they were both going to get them at the same time. And it's not because one of them had a more complex background than the other, and so we're surprised that they both got finished at the same time. It's, the president was always ultimately going to give them security clearances, regardless of what the FBI had to say. And that's the way you should think about it. Of course, it comes back to the White House. And so whenever he gets around to it, I'm done with my ice cream. I'm done golfing. I've had 35 cheeseburgers. Time for me to sign some papers. So that's what happened. And, but Don Beyer is reminding us along the way of the pesky little facts lingering around giving Ivanka Trump a so-called permanent security clearance. Why? Because Ivanka Trump used a private email server to evade public scrutiny. Her business was subject to a counterintelligence probe. She was fined for failure to accurately file financial disclosures. And she never answered our questions, meaning Congress's questions, about discrepancies on her SF-86 form that I think would be contacts with foreign governments, etc., in the filling out the secret, top secret security clearance background form. The form you fill out when your client agency says, we would like to get you investigated and go through the process for a background check. Fill out this SF-86 and tell us about all the spying you're doing. Strange that she was cleared on the same day as Jared Kushner, says Representative Don Beyer, and I can't figure out why he thinks that's strange, except that maybe he thinks it is not strange and is just saying it tongue-in-cheek, and I'm just going to have to leave it at that, I think, because there's really no other explanation. All right, a couple other weird stories that we should put on the record. This is an oddball one and hasn't gotten that much attention, and you can see why. It's just another one of those LOL, YOLO, nothing matters things. And I don't know how much it really has to do with Trump. It's just weird and figures that it would happen in the age of Trump, though I think it could have happened at any point and may even have been kicked off in the Obama administration. This is a strange finding, I think, by Josh Marshall himself, written up here in his editor's blog. The White House gift shop. I guess you knew that there was such a thing, or guessed that there was such a thing. Well, TPM, Talking Points Memo, has been looking into it, and here's what he came up with on May 25th. Late at night, he had this write-up in which he references some earlier thoughts about. Earlier today, I told you about the curious story of, quote, and you have to say it this way, quote, the White House gift shop, unquote. And I think this came up in the context of, we're selling those coins for the summit that might happen, but also might not happen, but also could. We'll see what happens, whether it happens or not. Everyone was looking at those stupid coins, and I think maybe that they were either for sale through the White House gift shop or just made people look at the White House gift shop along the way. Like, what other stupid things do they have for sale? Well, the quote-unquote White House gift shop has a nice built-in clientele, he writes. U.S. embassies abroad, cabinet departments, other government agencies, as well as political committees and campaigns and members of the public, all of whom purchase mementos and souvenirs from it, as you might expect, right? But back to our original question. Is this part of the U.S. government or somehow tied to the U.S. Secret Service, or what is it? Now, why would you think it was tied to the Secret Service? There's a background here that will tell you about it. Now, thanks to a number of emailers, but particularly TPM reader JB, Josh says, I think I now have the answer. There was once an actual White House gift shop in the basement of the old executive office building. Not the White House, but the one next door to it. But the current White House gift shop is a private for-profit company which has no connection to the White House or the Secret Service, you'll figure out why we keep mentioning them in a minute, or any other government entity, despite the fact that it seems to go to some lengths to give the impression that it does. And the Chinese would not give them a trademark for that. But we do, I guess. Here's the story. The White House gift shop is wholly owned by Giannini Strategic Enterprises, LLC, a legitimate business entity. Located in an office on 301 Front Street in Lititz, Pennsylvania. Fantastic pretzels, by the way, if you've never been to Lititz, Pennsylvania. I recommend it. You'll eat some pretzels and then say, I'm done here in Lititz, Pennsylvania. And you'll be happy you did, honestly. And anyway, so it's incorporated in Pennsylvania, the White House gift shop is. Why? Well, here's where that's where the store is located. How is that possible? The White House gift shop is located in Lititz, Pennsylvania? Yes. GSE, Giannini Strategic Enterprises, is owned by, you'll never guess, Anthony Giannini. That makes sense. Who is also the CEO and executive director of, quote, the White House gift shop, unquote. Seems like something that shouldn't be allowed, right? But here's the deal. It's kind of legit, sort of, maybe. As I explained earlier, and we'll just assume that he did, the history of the gift shop goes back to a service organization affiliated with the U.S. Secret Service. Why? Well, here's why. As recently as a decade ago, it was run by the United States Secret Service Uniformed Division Benefit Fund. Oh, okay. But on December 27th, 2011, the UDBF, United States Secret Service Uniformed Division Benefit Fund, right? I could see selling White House trinkets. Where should the money go? Should it go into the pocket of the president? No. Go to the Treasury? It could. Well, what about this? What about if it went to the Uniformed Division of the Secret Service Benefit Funds for officers, injured or killed, I guess, in the line of duty or whatever else. They're serving the president, serving the government. A benefit fund makes sense. Fine. Good idea. So, in 2011, December 27th, 2011, they signed a contract with Giannini Strategic Enterprises. Why them? I don't know. To take over the gift shop business and run it on behalf of the UDBF. Okay. In essence, the UDBF licensed GSE to run their store on its behalf. I could see that. Now, here is embedded in this a thank you letter from T.M. Muldoon, then the CEO of the UDBF, a few months later. So after the transfer. Now, this in March of 2012. A short little letter here. Dear Anthony, on behalf of the men and women of the United States Secret Service Uniform Division, the uniform gives away the secret, guys. Uniform Division Benefit Fund. I want to thank you for the generous donations that you have given to the fund to help our officers in need. You've also agreed to be the project manager for our online store. Ever since you engaged in this project, you've gone far above the line of duty with your generosity to improve the site, setting up international orders, and have had ideas to improve our sales. We look forward to a long relationship with you. I can't say enough as to how our friendship has grown and continue to grow. You could say more and use better grammar for it, but I get the point. Your generosity is most appreciated. Thank you for your support. T.M. Muldoon. So far, it's all clear enough, sort of. I think I get the picture. The UDBF subcontracted running the store to a private company. But then something weird happened. About a year later, the UDBF decided to liquidate itself, simply go out of existence. Now, it's interesting because it was first, hey, that's a good idea. There should be a UDBF to benefit the men and women of the Uniformed Division of the Secret Service, because why not? They're the sorts of people who deserve benefits. Let's have a nonprofit corporation that benefits them, and let's have them run the White House gift shop, and then when people buy White House Christmas tree ornaments, bookmarks, other dumb trinkets, the money goes to benefit them. Fine. Terrific. I like that. Okay, let's outsource it to somebody else. Okay, that always gives me pause, but all right. That's the way of the world these days. So be it. They outsource it. Now, to go from there ought to be a benefits fund, and it ought to be connected to this gift shop as a source of revenue, and we ought to outsource the operation so that, like, let's say the argument was that would lower overhead, and so more of the sales money would benefit the benefit fund, and the men and women of the Uniformed Services Division would benefit that much more greatly as a result of the fantastic savings that comes from outsourcing things. Boing, question mark, right? We'll go ahead and do that. And then the next year say, you know what? F the whole thing. There should be no benefit fund. Boing. And that's that. That seems suspicious. Like, why did that happen? Or why were you saying that the men and women of the Uniformed Services Division deserved benefits last year, and now they don't? That's untold, unanswered in all this. So we just have to take their word for it. A year later, the UDBF decides to liquidate itself and go out of existence. Here is the March 13th, 2013 email from Sean Lynch, identified as the vice chairman of the UDBF, telling Tony Giannini of his decision. Someone's got to tell Tony Giannini. He's responsible for running this thing for the benefit of the UDBF. And the UDBF is going to go out of business, go out of existence. Where is the CEO? I don't know. Tim Muldoon? Is it Tim Muldoon? We don't know. He's getting a communication from Sean Lynch, vice chairman. Greetings, Tony and Jackie. I don't know who Jackie is, but she works in some way and is involved in this thing. Greetings, Tony and Jackie. I I am sending this email as an introduction for you both, and also goodbye, I guess. As we have been discussing separately, the UDBF will be shutting down in the very near future. Prior to doing that, the White House gift shop, which you were running on our behalf, remember that thing, will be transferred over to Tony. That is to say, Giannini Strategic Enterprises. We, the board of directors, would like to give this company permission to purchase any past year ornaments and to purchase the 2013 ornament that has already been designed. Tony, feel free to contact Jackie to begin your purchases. If either of you need anything from me, do not hesitate to call Sean Lynch, Vice Chairman, UDBF. By the way, Jackie is J. Camara, C-A-M-A-R-A, of chemart.com. I don't know what that is, but that's the website that they're using for it's the domain for their email. I don't email her. Don't harass her. I don't know what she does. And even if I did, you shouldn't do it. But what an odd email to get. We're going out of business, but okay. You are responsible for selling these ornaments. People have ordered them. People might have already ordered or be willing to order the 2013 ornaments. Go ahead with all of that, but we're going out of business. Somebody's got to take over the assets of this web store, and you apparently have a physical store, and take this inventory off our hands. We don't want anything to do with it anymore. Giving it to you. You go sell it. So that's what they do. And here is a copy of the transfer of ownership form in which Sean Lynch transfers full ownership rights of www.whitehousegiftshop.com, an account held, I guess, under the Volusion Company. I guess that's their ISP, or maybe their domain registrant, and transferring it to Anthony Giannini, parentheses, GSE, signed by Sean Lynch, signed by Anthony Giannini as well, and all legal and attested to by, by a notary public in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, in the county of Lancaster, which I think is appropriate for Lidditz, Pennsylvania, pretzel capital of southeastern Pennsylvania. Press reports from October 2013 say the UDBF declared bankruptcy and went under at the end of 2013. Presumably the writing was on the wall at the beginning of the year. Now, who are the different players involved here? You may remember the name Anthony Giannini. I do not, but maybe you do if you read these prior installations at TPM. Going by Tony Giannini, he's the person on the gift shop website listed as CEO and executive director. Giannini's Giannini Strategic Enterprises essentially inherited, quote, the White House gift shop, unquote, when the UDBF went out of existence. GSE and the White House gift shop are now both run from an office in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, both incorporated in Pennsylvania. How exactly did Giannini hook up with the UDBF originally, I guess? No idea. No idea. Not me, not Josh. At least not in this article. Maybe he found out later. His LinkedIn page says that from 2010 to 2013, he was executive director of something called the United States Secret Service Fund. That stands to reason, I guess. But the only two references to that entity I can find, I mean, presumably, if that's not a mistake, that Josh found from Googling the phrase are on his LinkedIn page and his own post, Josh's own post on this from earlier this morning. In other words, no web presence for the United States Secret Service Fund. He may very well have meant the UDBF, though. Was he the executive director of it? That should be easy to find out. I don't know. If he's not, then WTF, man. In any case, once Giannini was gifted the gift shop, he went to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, see, we're there again, to trademark the name White House Gift Shop. From what I can tell, his initial application was rejected on the pretty straightforward argument that it gave the false impression that it was part of the White House. Giannini made a counter-argument that there were other trademark holders with the phrase White House in their title, though those don't suggest any connection to the executive office of the president. And that, contrary to the trademark office's claims, the actual White House, the government institution, was in fact connected to this company. How was he able to do this, since in fact the company has no connection to the White House? GSE argued that on the basis of the history of the gift shop, dating back to Harry Truman, that it was deeply tied to the White House. He bought it, and now it's his. There's a lengthy set of documents linked below where you can see all the arguments and exhibits, but the distillation of the argument can be found here in GSE's follow-up application. And it's not a very long selection. We'll try and breeze through it, see if we can understand it. In other words, it says, while the original use of the White House gift shop mark was made by entities affiliated, it should say, with the White House, including White House Police Benefit Fund, White House Security Fund, Uniform Division Benefit Fund, and the United States Secret Service Uniform Division Benefit Fund, these entities have assigned and transferred for valuable consideration, it doesn't have to be very valuable, all of the rights in the use of the White House gift shop to Anthony Giannini and Giannini Strategic Enterprises, or GSE. In addition, applicant GSE has paid the previous users of the mark substantial sums of money for the rights to the mark White House gift shop. Have they? The facts clearly show a commercial endorsement and sponsorship of GSE's services, which in turn show a commercial connection between GSE and the previous owners of the mark White House gift shop. Well, okay. And by the way, they refer you to the case of In Re Sloppy Joe's International Incorporated. And you could do a whole show on what constitutes a sloppy Joe and what does not. But some court had to deal with that at some point. The trademark office bought this argument and issued the trademark. It seems to be the only trademark in existence specifically referencing a relationship to the White House. You can see all this history I've described and the various arguments exhibits here, which is to say in a link in the article, which you will be provided with in the afternoon roundup of today's show, provided to you by yours truly, with our good friend Scott being out on, well, yeah, as I understand it, out on a pilgrimage trip. How do you like that? Very few of us making pilgrimages these days. And leave it to Kagro in the morning to come up with the guy who's going on a religious pilgrimage. And so we're doing our own summaries for some time, actually through like mid-June. And you can't not do it. Religious pilgrimage. That sounds pretty important and kind of interesting, too. So maybe we'll get a report on that when he's back. But, yeah, I will round that up and give that to you, and you can check back. And I'd be interested. I'm going to take a look back later on to see if there's any further developments in it. That's just a weird thing. I don't think it's going to impact Donald Trump. It's just a weirdo thing that comes to light, clearly happened before he became president. But to have it come to its final fruition in the Trump administration is really something. And because they're now dealing with a with a monetized presidency that's going to want to pocket a lot of dollars from monetizing, the presidency itself and making commemorative coins for every stupid thing every time he eats a fried chicken sandwich and craps at the golf course. They're going to have a memento for sale. It's going to be interesting to see whether eventually the Trump organization ends up trying to sue away the ownership of the White House gift shop from this guy. It'll be a hell of a contest. Okay. Other things, it's just a weird side story. Could have saved it for another day, but, today's as weird as any other. More stuff that needs to be included in our daily roundup. Let's take a quick look over at Yahoo News, because it's got a funny name. And Michael Isikoff is on the job, and, you want to keep up with what Michael Isikoff is about, especially when you have a tempting headline like this one. Trump's son, and here we mean Don Jr., should be concerned. That's in quotes. Trump's son should be concerned. Who says that? I don't know. But why did they say it? It's said because of the other half of this headline. FBI obtained wiretaps of Putin ally who met with Trump Jr. That probably should concern Trump Jr. And here's exactly why. The FBI has obtained secret wiretaps collected by Spanish police of conversations involving Alexander Torshin. We've called that name before. A deputy governor of Russia's central bank who has forged close ties with U.S. lawmakers and the National Rifle Association. That's the guy that led to a meeting with Donald Trump Jr. during the gun lobby's annual convention in Louisville, Kentucky in May of 2016, a critical time. A top Spanish prosecutor said Friday. Now, longtime listeners to the show have been listening to us describe this bizarro story arc of of Trump in general and the campaign from start to finish and the Russian collusion, etc., will remember that there was a Spanish branch of this investigation many moons ago, and it sort of disappeared from our radar. How interesting that it should now return. Jose Grinda, who has spearheaded investigations into Spanish organized crime. Don't forget, there's organized crime everywhere. And Spanish organized crime. What an interesting... Well, I'm going to make an HBO series about that. Said, anyway, I'll return to this. Jose Grinda is the guy we're talking about. He said that Bureau officials in recent months requested and were provided, FBI officials, that Bureau, requested and were provided transcripts of wiretapped conversations between Torsion and Alexander Romanov, or Romanov, depending on how you want to pronounce that one. And Romanov is a big name in Russia, I understand. A convicted Russian money launderer, which sounds like the other Romanovs. So maybe it's a family business. On the wiretaps, Romanov refers to Torsion as El Padrino, the Godfather. Interesting. And in Spanish, too. Just a few months ago, the wiretaps of these telephone conversations were given to the FBI. Uh-oh, I didn't know that. I barely have time for that little sound effect. Grinda said in response to a question from Yahoo News, during a talk he gave at the Hudson Institute, a conservative think tank in Washington. What in the world is he doing giving that talk there? Asked if he was concerned about Torsion's meetings with Donald Trump Jr. and other American political figures, Grinda replied, Mr. Trump's son should be concerned. I'm not. He should be. The comments by Grinda were the first clear sign that the FBI may be investigating Torsion, possibly as part of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's probe into Russian interference. And you'll never guess what they were interfering with. It was the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Torsion, a close political ally of Vladimir Putin, had multiple contacts with conservative activists in the United States during the election, seeking to set up a summit between the Russian president and then candidate Trump. Although the summit never transpired, as most summits never do with Donald Trump, Torsion did meet briefly with the president's son at a private dinner in Louisville during the May 2016 annual convention of the NRA. A member of the NRA since 2012, Torsion, did you know you could be a Russian member of the NRA? Sure, why not? Torsion has been a regular attendee of the group's conventions in recent years and hosted senior members of the group in Moscow. We've heard about those. Grinda said that the FBI, in its request for the evidence to the Guardia Civil, the Spanish National Police, provided no explanation as to why it was interested in the material and he didn't ask for one. And why should you? I don't have to ask them why they want this information, he said, but Grinda added that if Mueller or any other U.S. prosecutor seeks to use the material as part of a court case, they would have to make a second, more formal request to do so to the Spanish government. Would anybody like to do that? Spokesman for the FBI and Mueller's office didn't respond to requests for comment. Alan Futterfass, the lawyer for Trump Jr., said he was in a meeting and unable to comment when he was contacted by Yahoo News. And if that meeting was about what they say it was, I love it. Torsion has been the subject of intensifying U.S. government and congressional scrutiny over the past year and was recently among a lengthy list of oligarchs and Russian political figures sanctioned by the Treasury Department. As reported by Yahoo News and the Spanish newspaper El País last year, the Spanish National Police were preparing to arrest Torsion in August of 2013. Did we know that? When he was expected to fly to the Spanish island of Mallorca in August for the birthday party of Romanov. They love birthday parties. Everyone does. The arrest plan, which involved the deployment of more than a dozen police officers at the airport and at the hotel where the party was supposed to take place, grew out of a lengthy investigation headed by Grinda into Russian organized crime and money laundering. As part of the probe, the Guardia Civil wiretapped Romanov's phone and picked up 33 conversations with Torsion. Are they in violation of the Fourth Amendment? Who cares? It was done by the Spanish government, and it just happened to show up on the desk of the FBI. It's not an interesting question at this point. I like the plan, though, to make the arrest, particularly the part about them jumping out of the cake to do the bust. Anyway, Torsion never showed up, though, for the party, and he was never arrested. As a result, Grinda confirmed in an interview after his talk that some of the Guardia Civil suspected that Torsion had been tipped off to the arrest plan by Russian officials who had been asked to cooperate in the Spanish probe. But I guess they didn't. But Grinda added that he was unable to prove that was why Torsion never showed up for the party. And how disappointing is that? Despite the suspicions about his ties to Russian money laundering, Torsion continued to travel frequently to the United States and even showed up as part of the Russian delegation in February of 2017 to the National Prayer Breakfast, where he was at one point scheduled to meet with President Trump. That, too, got canceled, by the way. Strange thing, all these meetings getting canceled around him. That's not all there is, but there's just a little bit too much for us to finish. I'll show you that article. You can review it for yourself. Time now to turn the microphone over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and my attempt to cram as much of his information into this
From Daily
as
Kos
possible.
Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
With David Waldman.
So coming up next, chaos in the Trump White House never seems to end. Got more stuff here. The New York Times' sympathetic coverage of white moms struggling with opioids contrasts so sharply with its hysteria over crack babies, it's almost like night and day. Scientific research reveals Trump dehumanizes minorities to gain the approval of angry whites. You knew that, and you'll know so much coming up next.